The energy expenditure that they gained ended up equating over the course of 12 months to 20 days of fasting. So the amount of calories that they burned was equal to 20 days of not eating. I can't think of a lot of things that are better than like 20 days of fasting. Fasting itself is amazing. And if I can get 20 full days of fasting in a given year, I think that's a win, right? That's great. There's huge benefits to that. But when you're looking at energy expenditure, that's an important piece to remember. So with fasting, there's multiple sides to an equation, right? There's the actual upside benefits of fasting that are sort of, I guess you would call it additive, things that you're getting as a result of ketone production, as a result of autophagy. And then there's this whole other category where it's just flat out thermodynamics. Being in a severe deficit and burning extra calories and not consuming calories, well, that's a whole separate column in and of itself that has huge benefit. So the way to understand like what I'm talking about as something that's better than fasting or works as good as 20 days of fasting, we have to understand a couple of things. For one, energy expenditure is very important. That's how much energy you burn at rest. Okay, your resting energy expenditure, how many calories you simply burn just existing. So let's go ahead and break this down.
And then I also put a link down below for Bond Charge, who has amazing red light products. They have a red light therapy like sleeping bag. It's not, you don't literally sleep in it, but it has red lights on the top and the bottom. It's like a red light therapy bed, but at a fraction of the price. The red light can be hugely beneficial. And that link down below for Bond Charge is a 25% off discount link off any of their red light products, whether it's a panel, whether it's an infrared sauna blanket that also has red light, all kinds of different things. But that link down below is going to get you that 25% off.
So knowing what we know about energy expenditure, that it's just emitting calories at rest, how can we increase this amount? How can we increase our energy expenditure without fasting? Well, fasting itself doesn't actually increase energy expenditure. If anything, it actually decreases it, but it decreases the amount that we're consuming, so thereby we're getting sort of a free energy expenditure in a way. We need to look at the data surrounding cold exposure. Just literally being in a cold room or cool exposure of some kind in the realm of like 58 to 62 degrees. So there was a study published in the Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism Journal. This is interesting because they put subjects in a very controlled setting where they had them sleep at 75 degrees or sleep at 66 degrees. And during this time that they were sleeping, they measured their energy expenditure. So in a metabolic chamber where they can see how many calories they're burning at rest. Okay. And then they were looking at things like brown adipose tissue and how much body heat they were able to emit. Fascinating stuff. The group that was in the 66 degree room, immensely more energy expenditure. So they just burned more calories sleeping in a 10 degree, 9 degree cooler room. That's wild. But what's really interesting is if you actually back all the data out from this research, which we did, the energy expenditure that they gained by sleeping in a cooler room ended up equating over the course of 12 months to 20 days of fasting. So the amount of calories that they burned was equal to 20 days of not eating. So you get what I'm saying with this, is that if you look at purely the energy expenditure side of things, exposing yourself to cool temperatures, whether it's during sleep or at other periods of time, has this profound effect. So if you're looking at just a pure, if you were to continue to eat the exact same way, you didn't change anything about your diet, but you slept in a cold room, 10 degrees cooler than probably you're used to, or 8 degrees cooler than you're used to, that alone would be like adding 20 days of fasting to your life, to your year. And you wouldn't even realize it. My point in saying this isn't that you need to do this instead of fasting. My point in explaining this is to emphasize how powerful being exposed to cooler temperatures is. You don't need to get freezing cold to get fasting-like caloric expenditure or energy expenditure effects. You need moderately cool temperatures. And I've talked about other studies too, like just a couple hours per day of being exposed to 55, 60 degrees has huge effects, even if you're literally sitting in a room doing nothing. Cold plunges, yes, they have benefits. All of this stuff. Now, I should explain that fasting has benefits on top of this, okay? Fasting, you have the additive effects, ketone formation, you have the autophagy and things like that. But with the autophagy, we also have to remember that being in a caloric deficit is also going to induce autophagy. So if by increasing energy expenditure when you're sleeping and you're putting yourself into a deficit unbeknownst to you, your autophagic flux is probably increasing quite a bit too. Not as much as fasting, but it's increasing significantly above baseline. So you might be wondering, okay, well, I like to fast. This cold exposure thing sounds cool. How do I combine the best of both worlds? Well, you've probably noticed before that when you are fasting, sometimes you get cold. Okay, well, this cooling process within the body is actually sort of this redirection of blood flow and also a number of different genetic processes that are happening and actually could be a result of the browning of tissue to begin with. So there's some evidence that fasting might have an impact on brown adipose tissue to begin with. So maybe when you are fasting, if you want to get extra extreme and be a total weirdo like me, you can fast in cooler temperatures. On a day that you're fasting, crank the temperature down. On a day that you're fasting, hop in your cold plunge and then sit and freeze your butt off for a little while your body works to warm up, because it's that working process of trying to warm up that is increasing this efficiency, or should I say inefficiency. It's increasing the ability to create heat. So the more that you put yourself in that gray area of being moderately cold, the more your body has to work to try to develop a system to keep you warm. If you just jump in the cold plunge and get freezing cold and then immediately get warmed up, that's not doing much benefit. So it's all about putting this all together. So fasting is great. Cold exposure is great because it increases energy expenditure, but combining the two might even be more powerful. I'll see you tomorrow.